We always hear these stories about tech giants, and it feels like they were just destined for greatness, right? Like they were born from some single flash of genius. But today, we're going to look at the story of Xiaomi, and it's not really about one single idea. It's about the sheer, grinding, relentless persistence it took to make a totally impossible dream actually happen.
And it all starts with this number, 318.11 kilometers. Now, that's not a sales figure, it's not a stock price, it's a distance, a very, very specific distance. So what on earth could that possibly have to do with starting a global tech company?
And that's the real question, isn't it? Because this distance, this simple act of walking, it's the perfect metaphor for how Xiaomi was built from the ground up. It really reveals the philosophy that powered everything that came next.
Okay, so that number, 318.11 kilometers, that's the distance Xiaomi's founder, Lei Jun, walked in one single month. He'd set this personal goal for himself, walk 10 kilometers every single day, as a way to find some clarity, some courage, during a really tough time. It was this personal test of endurance, and when he did it, it just solidified this core belief for him. You really can reach an incredible goal, one step at a time.
So with that mindset, let's rewind the clock a bit and look at the world Lei Jun wanted to completely change. About a decade ago, if you lived in China and wanted to buy a mobile phone, your options were, well, let's just say they weren't great. You were pretty much stuck between two really bad choices.
And you can see the problem laid out so clearly here. On one hand, you had the big international giants, Nokia, Samsung. Awesome phones, but they were outrageously expensive for most people. Then, on the other hand, you had all the domestic brands and a ton of knockoffs that were cheap, but honestly, the quality was just mediocre. There was this massive gap right in the middle.
And right into that gap steps Lei Jun with this dream. I mean, it sounds simple, but it was just unbelievably audacious. Here's a guy, an entrepreneur, who had never made a single phone in his life, saying he was going to beat the global giants on quality and on price. To most people, it sounded completely impossible.
So, how in the world was he going to pull this off? He knew he couldn't just go head-to-head with these hardware giants. That was a losing game. He needed a totally different strategy, a wild idea that would let him attack the problem from a completely different angle.
And this was his secret weapon, the triathlon model. The core idea was to stop thinking like a traditional hardware company. Instead, he wanted to build a company that would pull together the best of three totally different worlds: hardware, software, and the internet. It was a brand new way of thinking about how you even make a phone.
So let's break it down. His plan was basically to create a super team. He thought, what if I could get the hardware expertise of a Motorola, combine it with the software genius of a Microsoft, and then layer on the internet smarts of a Google, all under one roof? If he could just assemble a team with the best people from those three fields, maybe, just maybe, he'd have a shot.
But here's the thing about a great blueprint, right? It's totally useless if you don't have the right people to build it. And this was Lei Jun's biggest challenge by far. How do you convince these top-tier engineers from huge companies like Google to leave their safe, prestigious jobs for some outsider's dream that sounded, well, completely unreliable?
The funny thing is, the very first recruitment actually went surprisingly well. He met with Lin Ben, a VP from Google, literally drew the triathlon model on a napkin for him, and Lin Ben was in. It almost seemed too easy. But that was just a coincidence. The real struggle was about to begin.
This one quote from Hong Feng, another top Google engineer Lei Jun was trying to get, pretty much sums up what everyone else was thinking: unreliable. It was just a polite way of saying, you have got to be crazy.
So when Hong Feng basically interviewed Lei Jun, he asked three devastatingly simple questions. Have you ever made phones before? Lei Jun's answer, no. Okay, do you know the CEO of the biggest mobile carrier in the country? No. All right, does the head of the biggest manufacturer in the world, Terry Gou, even know who you are? The answer, he doesn't know me. I mean, on paper, Lei Jun looked completely unqualified to do this.
And yet, after all those no's, after pretty much admitting how unreliable it all sounded, Hong Feng's conclusion was just stunning. He just said, we can give it a try. The power of the idea itself, that triathlon dream, was strong enough to overcome the fact that Lei Jun had zero traditional qualifications. He got him.
This incredibly difficult process, convincing smart people like Hong Feng to take a massive leap of faith, it led Lei Jun to a fundamental principle, a rule that would define the early days of Xiaomi and become the real secret to its success.
Let this number sink in for a second. In the company's entire first year, Lei Jun spent 80% of his time just finding people. It wasn't a part of his job. For a huge chunk of time, it was his job. The whole thing.
This rule is his modern twist on an old Chinese story, but the lesson is crystal clear. Finding the absolute best people isn't about just being persistent, it's about being relentlessly persistent. It might take 30 meetings, 30 phone calls, not just 3.
And that is the ultimate takeaway from how Xiaomi got started. It wasn't about who you knew or your past experience. It was about having a dream so big and so compelling that it could withstand the toughest questions, and then having the pure grit to spend whatever time it took to find those few people who were just crazy enough to believe in it with you. So that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We all have goals that seem unreliable, maybe even impossible. But what if the only thing standing between us and achieving them isn't talent or luck, but just the simple willingness to make that 30th visit?